Good morning and welcome back to Cooking with Suzanne. Today we're going to make a leek bread pudding. It's a wonderful savory bread pudding and it's actually really nice to serve with any type of roasted meats. And with the holidays around the corner, I think this is a wonderful side dish to serve with turkey or with a nice roasted ham. It's also wonderful on its own. At our restaurant, Suzanne Fine Regional Cuisine, we used to serve this as a vegetarian entree, and it was very well received. So let's get started. So the first thing that you will need to do is toast some bread cubes. You need 12 cups of bread cubes. And at the restaurant, I used to use brioche, and it made for a very elegant bread pudding. Today, I'm going to use just baguettes. I purchased 2 baguettes. I cubed them and then I toasted them in the oven at 325 degrees for 20 minutes. You want to make sure that your bread cubes are very dry. There should be no more moisture left in the bread. So this version is going to be a little more rustic as opposed to more refined with the brioche. You can certainly use brioche, it's fabulous. You could also use a challah bread, whatever. The most important thing to understand is that you need 12 cups. So we have our bread already toasted and ready to go, which by the way, you could do in advance. Then you will need 4 large eggs, 3.5 cups of whole milk, and 3.5 cups of heavy cream. 7 cups total of liquid. And then to that, we're going to add some herbs. I'm here using some fresh thyme and fresh chives. I love the onion flavor, especially since it is leeks that we're putting into the bread pudding. The chives also gives it that wonderful onion flavor, which is really great. We're also going to add some Gruyere cheese. You can use whatever type of cheese you really enjoy most. I would say a good 1 cup of grated cheese is what you will need for this bread pudding, which by the way, I have a 9x13. I generally tend to use glass, Pyrex 9x13. I don't have one here with me today, so I'm going to use this pan, which I think will be okay. I'm going to set it on a half sheet pan just to make sure it doesn't bake too quickly. So I have buttered it and it's all set and ready for us. And then of course we do need to season it with some white pepper and salt. And if you happen to have a nutmeg grater, a few gratings of fresh nutmeg would be nice here as well. So here are our leeks. They've already been braised and I ended up with 2 cups here of braised leeks. And I will go over that with you after we assemble our bread pudding. Then we'll talk about the onions and the leeks here. So the first thing you want to do is whisk your 4 eggs. You want to whisk them pretty well. You want to make sure that when you run the eggs through your whisk, it flows through very quickly and it doesn't get hung up by any of the whites. There we go. Okay, so let's add 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt and 1/8 teaspoon of white pepper, which by the way, you could use black pepper. In this case, it's more for aesthetic so that you don't see little black specks in there, but I would say that black pepper or white pepper works very nicely here. So let's get in 1/8 teaspoon of freshly ground white pepper. Whisk that up. I have some fresh chopped thyme, and I would say a good 2 teaspoons. I love the flavor of the thyme. So we're going to, that smells so good. And our chives, 2 tablespoons of fresh chopped chives. There we go, wonderful. And now we can add our eggs directly to our cream and milk and fresh herbs. This is actually very, very simple. And of course, you do realize that for a savory bread pudding, there's so many other ingredients that you can add to it. This is all about the custard and the leeks, and it will complement almost any other dish that you're going to be serving. So it's a wonderful side dish. And I do love the flavor of the leeks. So then just take your whisk. I don't have too much room left in my bowl here, so I'm going to be super careful. Okay, there we go. Here's our liquid, and here are our bread cubes and our cheese. So the first thing that you want to do, we need to assemble this and let it sit for 30 minutes before we go ahead and bake it. And by the way, you should preheat your oven, middle of your oven at 325 degrees. Okay, so let's start. Here we go. Let's start with 1/4 cup of cheese to put on the bottom. And you just really want to coat. If you need a little extra, put a little extra. Okay, so I have put some grated cheese on the bottom, and now I'm going to put 1/2 of the bread cubes on the bottom. So this is a 2-cup measure, and we'll take that. Here's 2 cups, and then another 4, so that should be 1/2 of our bread cubes. Okay, and just spread it out. Okay, that looks terrific. Okay, so there I have lined it with the bread cubes, and now we will put 1/2 of our braised leeks, and you can just take a spatula or a spoon and just spoon it. So you want to put about 1 cup of leeks, and just take your spatula and just kind of spread it out so that it's a nice even layer. By the way, this bread pudding was requested. Someone that really loved this bread pudding at the restaurant requested to have this recipe, so hopefully it'll be enjoyed by everyone. So there are our leeks, and now we will put another 1/4 cup of grated Gruyere cheese and just sprinkle it over the top. Now you can see the cheese on top, and now we will do this one more time. We will put our remaining 6 cups of bread cubes on top, spread them out, and we will put our last cup of leeks and onion. We'll talk about this mixture in a minute. Okay, that's all spread out. Now we'll take about 1/2 cup, which should be the remaining amount of Gruyere cheese, to put over the top. Okay, that is the rest of our ingredients. We'll first pour it in with a ladle. So after I let this sit for 30 minutes, I already have a 1/2 sheet pan in the oven heating up that I'm going to set this on top, and I will bake it for 1 hour. And if it's not completely set at that point, I will put a piece of foil very loosely, just lie it over the top. If it's already nice and dark on top, and if you don't want it to get any darker, just put a sheet of foil, lie it right over the top, and let it go for anywhere from another 15 to 30 minutes. So this can take up to an hour and a half to cook. You want to start looking at it after the first hour, and you do want this to be fully set. This is going to go right to the top. Okay, there we go. So now I will set my timer for 30 minutes, and then I'll show it to you before it goes into the oven so that you can see. The cream, the custard mixture is right almost to the very top. Actually, let me come around so hopefully you can have a better view of what this looks like right now. Okay, so there's lots of cream. It's almost to the very top. And now we're going to let this sit for 30 minutes before we put it in the oven to get it baked. Another thing I want to mention is that at the restaurant, when we served this as a vegetarian entree, we used to make a wonderful garden tomato sauce, and we would line our plate with some nice light tomato sauce, put a nice large piece of bread pudding, and then we would either put a nice small amount of ratatouille or even just sear some yellow and green squash and put that on the top, which was a really nice light summery version of making this bread pudding. It was so good. Another idea that I have to say that our sous chef, Tyler Bowers, really, if he took a piece home on Saturday night, on Sunday, he and his wife Mary would enjoy this for a brunch. And Tyler said that he would fry eggs or poach eggs and put a nice egg on top of each piece of bread pudding. So I think that's a fantastic idea as well. So okay, be back here in about 30 minutes to show you the difference as it is absorbed before it goes into the oven. Okay, we are about 3 minutes away. So I just want to let you know that I always put a little bit of fleur de sel, or you can use Malden sea salt, but you really want a nice finishing salt to go on top of your bread pudding. And I usually do it just before it's ready to go into the oven. So here I have some really nice fleur de sel, and you just, if you you want to make sure that you get the entire bread pudding. So with the finishing salt, you want to kind of season it lower than if you were using a kosher salt. You want to make sure that you get the entire bread pudding covered with just a little bit of this beautiful finishing salt. Okay, that's it. So in about 2 minutes, this is going to go into the oven. And in the meantime, I just want to go over the leeks and the onion mixture that we put into the bread pudding. So this is more of a baby leek. It's very small. And if you're using any young leeks about this size, you're going to need 5 or 6 of them. And let me just grab a quart container here that I have. And you will need about 4 cups of cleaned leeks, along with 1 nice sweet onion and 2 beautiful plump large cloves of garlic. So the leeks, what's really important to share with you is that they're very dirty, and the best way to clean them, first of all, I cut off the dark green. The dark green is not edible. It's edible if you want to put it in a vegetable stock or something like that, but otherwise you want to cut off the dark green and the root end. And then take your leek and split it in half all the way down. Open it up, and I can already see the dirt going on my cutting board. And then you just want to slice it. And it's quite dirty. When you are growing leeks, it's really nice to mound it with as much dirt as possible so that you get more of the white leek, less of the green. So they are very dirty. Okay, this is going into the oven. I'll set a timer for exactly 1 hour. I don't think it'll be done in an hour, but I always check it in an hour. Okay, the timer just went off. I'm setting my timer for 1 hour. If it is not finished, I will take a sheet of foil and just lie it right over the top. You don't have to seal it, just put it on top if it already has a beautiful golden color. And then let it finish baking. It can take up to 1.5 hours to completely bake. So let's get this in the oven. Okay, timer is on, and the oven temperature, once again, is 325 degrees. Okay, so as I said, I used 5 or 6 of these small leeks to get a quart of uncooked leeks, which then cooks down to your 2 cups, which is what you need. So here's a bowl of cool water. And what you want to do is just take your leeks and put them in, and you want to make sure this is a medium-sized bowl for just 1 leek here. But if I were to do the 5 to 6 leeks, I would use a much larger bowl. You want plenty of water, so then you can swish it around, let it sit for about 5 minutes or so, and all of the dirt will go to the bottom of your bowl. And then you will have very clean leeks. And that little extra water that sticks to the leeks is perfectly fine to do your braising in. So then I would just take a spider and just remove the leeks. And what you're looking for is about 4 cups or a quart of leeks, not packed, just lightly put in here. So you have about 4 cups. Along with that, you would want 1 sweet onion and 2 really large, nice plump cloves of garlic minced. And if they're not nice and plump and big like this, you probably would want to go to 4 cloves. And the only other thing I wanted to show you, so what we do is we braise. So take a pan about this size, put a tablespoon or 2 of butter. If you don't want to use butter, however, leeks really love butter, you can use olive oil. Put a couple of tablespoons in, heat it up, and then add your onion. Let it start to cook for a minute or 2. Add your leeks, salt it. You want to salt your leeks while they're still raw. So I would say a good ½ teaspoon of kosher salt. Toss it, let it simmer. So once you would put it on very low, cover it, let it simmer. There, now you're braising your leeks. And then the last minute or 2, you would want to add your minced garlic. Stir that around and then taste it. If it seems that the leeks need a little more salt, then you can add your salt then. That's a good time to taste it. Then put it out on a plate and let it completely cool before you go ahead and add it to your bread pudding. And in regard to your sweet onion, it's always really good to have a flat surface to chop or dice. Then you will ensure yourself of not hurting or cutting yourself. So always start with a nice flat surface. So I cut it in half lengthwise. I kept the root on so it stays intact for you. And then You can, however big or small you want to make your dice, you want to have your slices either very close together or much further apart. Here I would want this to be about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch dice, so I have it fairly close together. So I went in one direction. Now I will take my blade and go downward towards my cutting board and hold on to the top and just slide your knife through. I would say 3 or 4 slices should be plenty. And then you are able to go ahead, hold on to both sides of your onion, and then go ahead and start to dice. And now you have perfectly 1/4 inch diced onion. You just finished the 2, and you have really nice diced onion, which is what you're looking for. So I think that's all that you need here. Once again, melt your butter or whatever fat you're going to use. Get your pan nice and warm. Add your onion. Season your onion with a touch of kosher salt. Once it starts to really get activated, a minute or 2, go ahead and add your leeks. Let that cook a little bit, then lower it very low. You want to cook this slowly. And then cover it. I'd say it takes about 10 minutes. And the last 2 minutes, add your garlic and then taste it. Taste for seasoning and taste to make sure that your leeks are fully cooked. You don't want any crunch in your leek, okay? And then let it cool before you go ahead and make your bread pudding. So our bread pudding is done. In my oven, it took about 1 hour and 20 minutes. I didn't have to cover it. I thought this color looks really, really nice. I'll come around so you can see it. I let it sit for about 10-15 minutes. That's there. That is our beautiful bread pudding. Okay. Oh, there we go. That came out pretty nicely. Let's just slide that onto our plate. And here is our beautiful bread pudding. Okay. And there we go. It looks great. Okay, thanks so much everyone. Enjoy. Take care.